Hi, welcome. On this video, it's going to be part two, responding to a live stream put out by a popular balanced dog trainer, uh, Robert Cabral. And the title of this, The Truth About the Lies in Dog Training. And again, I'm going to respond. Again, I'm going to make this clear. I'm going to put up more disclaimers here, considering the issue of censorship now happening in the dog training world, following again fair usage. So again, I'm responding to this video. This is a public video, offering again perspective here, insight into what is the lie of dog training. I'll talk about that. Okay, it's this idea that training is a learning-based exercise once a relationship problem is underway. And this whole learning-based idea of things, understanding that balanced dog trainers are in agreement with it, just like force free. So this is where you get all this back and forth. Interesting. Again, you see these trainers bringing other balanced dog trainers on their live streams in this type of softball, interview, where they're staying within the kind of the parameters of their ideology. Their comfort zone, so to speak, by way of this idea of things. And so again, this is where you get this whole issue about copyright strikes, censorship. This is starting to become a trend with many balanced dog trainers. So I'm going to play some more of this. I'm going to respond to it again by way of some of the talking points that are put forward by Cabral.
Now, part two, training. You will hear so many lies told to you about dog training. Namely told to you, by the way, on both sides. You will hear it from the positive only and from the other side, from the dog, I used to call them balanced dog trainers, but just dog trainers.
And so I'll stop here because here's the thing. I mean, this comes through this whole thing of even being able to these trainers even reconcile the labels now. And this came through, again, video put out, recently by way of, Larry Crone, identifying as a purely positive, balanced dog trainer. It's like, well, what the heck is that? Well, that's the point. Exactly. What is it? But again, it seems to make sense. It will make sense once you start to understand that both these groups are tied into this idea that trains a learning-based exercise. And so this whole thing about, what defines a trainer? Well, these trainers are, again, they're approaching a relationship problem. This is where all the words about learning and teaching, but they're motivating dogs in the way I describe is problematic, based again on the fact that they're not even considering why that be a problem at the very beginning, based again on motivating dogs to respond when a relationship problem is already underway. Again, this is what I talk about. That's why I talk about often the parenting example. You should expect a problem or a disconnected picture if you were to do what these trainers are doing with a child that's already selfish and, and not even considering the role of the parent, but rather simply just like coming into, a parent's, home to help out with the relationship problem, like Santa Claus with a bag of, goodies over your shoulder. And the only thought process going on is how can I get this child to respond, perform some good responses so I can sell those responses, as is to the parent and just walk out. And that's exactly what's happened in the dog training world. But here's this whole thing about trying to define, and again, this is where that statement comes from, by way of Cabral saying, science doesn't belong in dog training. Again, total contradiction based on the fact that, balanced dog trainers, they have built off of this idea by way of what's called the four quadrants. So they've accepted this idea by way of motivating dogs to respond this way as solid. Okay, they've just automatically taken a hold of it and then have built off of it without realizing, well, the actual core tenet's flawed. Okay, and I show that very clearly.
Only one side has really isolated themselves into a quasi-cult. Ruled.
So you're using the word cult. Understand, both these groups are tribal. Okay, I mean, this is why. You really think what I'm saying here? I can say the things I'm saying because I'm not restricted. Just like balanced dog trainers, understand that once you identify as a balanced dog trainer, right, you've already come into agreement with the rules. Okay, you're going to stay within your ideological boundary lines. You're not going to push beyond those. This is why you don't hear balanced dog trainers, talking about the real issue. How can you talk about that which you're in agreement with? So you've already sold out. Understand, it doesn't matter what Cabral or anyone else says. Once you identify, that's your identity. Think about what I'm saying. And then you have your support, right? All your support system through that. That's not a good thing. Especially considering all the inherent problems. So you're dealing with this is like a identity crisis issue here. So the cult issue isn't just about force free. Okay, the cult issue is equally about balanced. Understand that. I mean, I want to be clear.
By very, very angry people. The participants of positive only training are often very, very nice people. They're often hoodwinked into belief.
No, a lot of them aren't nice people. I mean, this is the thing about this type of, language issue here. In fact, they'll actually, and there's lots of videos that there's talk about the type of rhetoric, the inflammatory language that comes out of the force-free side of things, just like the balance side of things. It's all trash talk, and you see this on social media with all these trainers getting personal with each other. Where do you think that's all coming from? So, this whole wordplay, and this is the problem with all these trainers, they're like trying to, it's just like this thing where it's like the big lie of the dog training world, and no one can speak truth anymore. Even the fact that, how nasty things, like it's like a total disconnect from all the inherent problems in the dog training world. I talk about that. Before you do anything, before you even, just look around the dog training world, take a month off social media, or actually take a month off of, social media a certain way, but do an audit. Go on social media and do your own investigation and start asking the questions. This is why I put out the series I put out, Flipping the Script. Because I'm going through, I'm connecting all the dots with all these controversies. They're all symptomatic. There's no accidents or coincidences. There's not some random thing going on in the dog training world, even through all the breed-specific bans. Look at all the divisiveness, this back and forth, all the confusion, all the blame shifting on the dogs. That's all inherent. That's all symptomatic. It's all connected to this idea.
Believing that they will be able to train any dog to do anything using positive only, and they will often believe and then further espouse that you never need to use a correction on a dog.
See, and here's the problem. So when in balanced dog training, doing the same thing, when it's all about superficial response, right? Because really think about this, what's the criteria to even revealing the current state of the relationship? If it's about this idea of things, well, the core ingredients aren't there. The way I describe, way that they come into a intentional interaction based method, so it doesn't reveal that way at all. So your whole jumping in point's wrong. You're right. So it's this whole thing about train any dog. What does that even mean? See, once you start to understand this is all just totally superficial, appearance based, it doesn't even reveal truth as to the relationship itself. Just like I talk about the parenting example, consider the moments that truth is revealed through, right, parental influence, a demand being put on a child, versus a child playing their video games, doing what they want to do. Well, this is where that statement comes from in the dog training world. My dog is pretty good, except. I would encourage people to really reconsider that statement in light of, again, the information I'm putting out. The pretty good part is the deceptive nature of appearances. Dogs that are gaining control, they look balanced. The accept part is the truth through certain interactions, especially with those two core ingredients I talk about, a part of the interplay.
And using a correction on your dog will be the most dangerous thing you will do for that dog.
So this is the trap. Using a correction. I talk about this. Balanced dog trainers they're in a catch-22 situation. They're compromised. So this comes out to watch the video I did on the Jamie Penrith Good Morning Britain interview, leading right up to the point where he's challenged. He's trying to say, well, for some dogs, using a remote collar for the safety of the dog running out onto the street, and the other, anti remote collar force free trainer saying, hold on here a second. We can clearly show we can get the dog to make a different choice, change the focus, right? Versus what I show the role of influence, intercepting as control is manifesting through an express state. See, I define it. So balanced dog trainers, they put themselves in this trap. And so this is why they're in agreement with certain concepts such as counter conditioning. I talk about the context of agreeableness, the themes I talk about, bribery, accommodation, negotiation. So balanced dog trainers are in a trap, in a catch-22 situation. They can't get out of it.
And other people will tell you that not using a correction on a dog and the such will lead to the demise of that dog. Now, let's look at this for a second. People who are espousing purely positive training have a huge agenda, right? It's a huge, huge movement. Think of it as politics, right?
So pay attention here, because again, this is where I talk about balanced dog trainers are in a trap. They cannot call out the force-free movement. Okay, they've come into agreement with this ideology. You can't call out that which you're in agreement with. They play along the edges of it.
And think of this wing of politics as being the one that's going to be the one that is the only way you can follow, right? In other words, if you don't follow the purely positive way, then you're destroying dogs.
And see, so there's this, and I again encourage people to apply critical thinking. So there's always this thing where balanced dog trainers can't truly separate. The statements they make about how they describe the purely positive, force-free, and one thing they're trying to say radical is another thing they come into agreement with it. Like they cannot separate. They're talking on both sides of their mouth. This is why you ever wonder why these balanced dog trainers can't call out the problem. How can you call out an idea that you're connected to? Like that's impossible.
You will kill dogs. You will harm dogs. You will make them mentally unstable. They will live in constant fear. And nothing could be further from the truth. Abusing a dog is abusing a dog. And
you see, and even that statement there is, is wishy-washy. Okay, and the reason I say that is we get in this whole thing because you're seeing this more and more, being able to even reconcile, right, the reactions of dogs. Okay, the Jeff Gelman bonker situation is an example of the confusion of, the role of influence, the reactions of dogs. The dog was, gave a startled response. And all the balanced dog trainers that piled on to that situation, trying to cancel Gelman, abuse. And don't get me wrong, in terms of me supporting Gelman, I don't support balanced training, period, but any process that does not define the role of influence, reconciled properly through a interaction base, being dialed in, all the themes I talk about being dialed into the relationship, the dog's state of mind. So I've done a video on it. You can watch it. But when you see the confusion here, certain situations really speak volumes, right? Balanced dog trainers, they'll pile in just like force-free trainers on certain situations. But the question you need to ask, well, why is that? What's going on here? They can't even get their act together.
And if you abuse a dog, whether through training, whether through compulsion, whether through too much.
See that? Compulsion, right? So when balanced dog trainers look at what I do through how I'm trained, how I'm interacting with dogs, they'll label it as compulsion, right? Because again, this is that fuzzy line where it's all superficial. They're playing both sides of it, right? So this is why they're all over the map.
much pressure or whether through
Pressure.
neglect, which neglect is the biggest form of abuse that all dogs face. Living outside, uncared for, is the biggest form of abuse you'll see.
So we're talking about neglect, right? So he just switches over to, like the low hanging fruit, the obvious stuff. Failing to consider it's this ideology, right? But that takes critical thinking, right? So I'll stop it here, okay? This is part 2. But all to say, when you look at balanced dog trainers, they're all over the map for a reason. They try to, it really comes through here, they're trying to play both sides. They're trying to call out they can't do it, force-free trainers, right? They're trying to find some way to separate themselves and basically have their cake and eat it too. But this speaks of balanced training. They've played all sides from the beginning. Oh, clicker training, oh, we do that. Oh, positive reinforcement, oh, we do that. Oh, treats, we do. See, Cabral's going in the shelters with his handful of treats. I talk about that. I mean, it's like this, and so it's like trying to play the victim here. Upset that that they're being they're in a kind of a pressure cooker, and of course they would be, based on what this ideology represents. Once you start to really understand this stuff, it all starts to become clearer and clearer as you go along as to all the inherent problems in the dog training world. So my encouragement, okay, for anyone again going through this is apply critical thinking. Ask the questions these trainers never asked from the beginning, because here's the point, is once you start to cross lines here, once you start to identify as, say a balanced trainer, that whole tribal mentality thing starts to take over. You're not going to be able to go outside your ideological boundary lines here to challenge anything. And then what happens over time, the trade-off becomes too great because you got too much to lose. Okay, not in a good way, don't get me wrong. The trade-off is such that, you talk about all the inherent things, bad things happening through this idea of things, the blame shifting on the dogs. So again, I would encourage people to really ask questions, do your own research. But the dog training world is coming apart at the seams for a reason. Thanks for watching.